When Daniel Winters sealed the crisp white envelope with a faint smirk, he wasn't thinking about closure, he was thinking about revenge. The gold-embossed wedding invitation in his hand wasn't an olive branch, it was a weapon. It read, "Daniel Winters and Victoria Hale request your presence at their wedding." He imagined Emily's face when she opened it, the shock, the hurt, the reminder of what she had lost. 3 years ago, Emily had been his wife. They'd lived in a small apartment on the east side of Chicago, surviving on his modest income while she stayed home caring for their newborn twin boys. Daniel, ambitious but impatient, had grown bitter. He wanted more, the cars, the parties, the attention. Emily, quiet and loving, didn't fit into that picture. She was holding him back, he'd said during one of their last fights. He'd walked out one rainy evening, leaving her standing in the doorway, holding both crying babies and begging him not to go. Now, Daniel had made it. After meeting Victoria Hale at a corporate event, his life had changed overnight. She was stunning, rich, and connected, the daughter of Arthur Hale, CEO of Hale Industries. Within a year, Daniel went from living paycheck to managing million-dollar contracts at Hale Enterprises. The engagement followed soon after, and Daniel's ego swelled along with his bank account. Victoria loved showing off, and Daniel loved being shown off. Together, they were a perfect picture, on the surface. Beneath it, Daniel was still the same insecure man who needed others to feel small so he could feel big. That's why he sent the invitation to Emily. "She deserves to see how far I've come," he told Victoria one night, sipping champagne in their penthouse suite overlooking the Chicago skyline. Victoria arched an eyebrow. "You want your ex-wife at our wedding?" "Exactly," Daniel said with a grin. "She'll realize she lost the best thing that ever happened to her. It'll be good for her." Victoria laughed softly. "Well, make sure she sits in the back." And so, the plan was set. The wedding day dawned crisp and bright. The Hale estate buzzed with photographers, reporters, and VIP guests. The venue itself was breathtaking, a marble-floored ballroom decorated with cascading white roses and crystal chandeliers that threw glittering light across the crowd. The air smelled of money and luxury. Daniel stood at the altar, straight-backed and proud, his tuxedo pressed to perfection. Guests whispered compliments as they passed. "What a handsome groom, he's come so far, Victoria's lucky." He smiled smugly, scanning the crowd for one face, Emily's. He pictured her arriving late, flustered, maybe wearing that same old blue dress she used to wear when they couldn't afford much. He imagined her sitting alone, uncomfortable, wishing she hadn't come. But then the murmur started. It began as a faint buzz at the back of the hall, growing into gasps and whispers that spread like wildfire. The string quartet faltered mid-note. Daniel frowned and glanced toward the massive glass doors. A Rolls-Royce Phantom, silver, spotless, and impossibly elegant, rolled up the long driveway. Its engine purred softly, commanding attention without trying. The chauffeur stepped out, immaculate in a black suit and white gloves, and opened the rear door with practiced grace. Every head turned. Even Victoria's hand tightened around her bouquet. Then, out stepped Emily. For a moment, Daniel forgot to breathe. She was glowing. Gone was the fragile, tear-streaked woman he'd left behind. Emily stood tall, poised, and breathtaking. Her hair, once always tied back, flowed in golden waves over her shoulders. She wore a sleek, custom-fitted gown, the kind that whispered money, paired with understated diamond earrings that sparkled under the chandeliers. But it wasn't just her appearance that stunned the room. It was the quiet confidence she carried, the aura of someone who no longer had anything to prove. And then came the triplets. 3 little children, 2 boys and a girl, stepped out of the car after her. Perfectly dressed, holding hands, their eyes wide and curious. The boys wore tiny suits, the girl had a white dress and a matching ribbon in her hair. Gasps echoed again. Daniel blinked in disbelief. Triplets. He remembered only the twins, but there was a third. Emily smiled, walking with effortless grace, the children following close behind. The photographer, who had been snapping shots of Victoria's arrival minutes ago, turned his lens instinctively toward Emily and her children. The flash popped repeatedly. "Who is she?" One guest whispered. "I think that's the ex-wife," another replied, awe dripping from their tone. "She came in a Rolls-Royce." Daniel's jaw clenched. His pulse quickened. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Emily wasn't supposed to shine. She was supposed to shrink. Victoria's lips tightened, her perfect smile faltering. "Daniel," she muttered under her breath, "you didn't tell me she looked like that." Emily approached the entrance with a serene smile, nodding politely to the ushers who scrambled to greet her. Even the Hales' personal butler looked uncertain of how to address her. She handed him her invitation, her manicured fingers steady. "Mrs. Emily Winters," she said calmly. "And my children." The butler hesitated, recognizing the name. Daniel's ex-wife. But the luxury car, the elegance, the aura, everything about her screamed status. "Right this way, ma'am," he stammered, bowing slightly. Emily walked down the aisle, the train of her gown gliding like silk over the marble floor. Every guest she passed turned to look, admiration and curiosity replacing judgment. She caught Daniel's gaze as she neared the front, and for a brief second, he saw something in her eyes, strength. The kind of strength born from pain and survival. "Emily," he breathed, barely audible. She gave him a soft smile, not of mockery, but of peace. As if she'd already forgiven him long ago. She took her seat near the front, her triplets sitting quietly beside her, the little girl clutching Emily's hand. Daniel's mind spun. Who was she now? How could she afford that car, that dress, that confidence? Victoria leaned closer, whispering sharply, "What is going on, Daniel?" "She's stealing the attention," but Daniel couldn't answer. He was still staring at Emily, the woman he had discarded, and realizing with every passing second that she had become everything he had once wanted, graceful, admired, untouchable. The whispers continued behind him, growing louder. "I heard she owns a company now. She's the founder of something big, an investment firm maybe. She came with triplets. Look at them, adorable." As the ceremony began, Daniel's proud smile vanished. For the first time that day, he felt small. The wedding he planned to showcase his success had just been hijacked, not by scandal, not by mistake, but by the sheer, effortless presence of the woman he'd thrown away. And Emily, she sat quietly, her heart steady. She hadn't come to seek revenge or prove a point. She'd come because she was invited, and because she no longer feared him. But deep down, Daniel knew, the tables had turned. The ceremony ended, but no one was talking about the bride or groom. The whispers, the curious glances, the flashing cameras, all followed Emily. As the guests drifted toward the reception hall, Daniel's nerves twisted into a knot. This wasn't the triumphant moment he had imagined. He'd wanted Emily to see his success and feel small. Instead, she had become the highlight of his wedding, calm, elegant, and untouchable. Victoria noticed it too. Her smile was painted on, stiff as porcelain. "Daniel," she hissed between her teeth as photographers snapped another picture, not of them, but of Emily and the kids. "Why are people staring at her more than me?" Daniel forced a laugh. "Relax, babe. Let's enjoy our night." But he couldn't relax. Not when every step Emily took drew attention. She seemed to float through the crowd, greeting people graciously. Even Victoria's father, Arthur Hale, looked impressed as she shook his hand. Arthur smiled politely. "And you are?" Emily returned the smile with quiet poise. "Emily Winters. You might have heard of the Green Harbor Foundation." Arthur's eyes widened slightly. "You're that Emily Winters. Guilty as charged," she said softly, sipping her champagne. Daniel froze mid-sip. The Green Harbor Foundation, that was one of the fastest-growing investment and charity organizations in Chicago, known for helping single mothers and small businesses. He had read about it in Forbes just a few months ago. He had no idea she was behind it. Arthur clapped her shoulder warmly. "My wife donates to your programs. Excellent work, Mrs. Winters." "Thank you, Mr. Hale," she replied gracefully. "It's dear to my heart. It started small, in my kitchen, actually, with 3 babies asleep on the couch." Daniel felt the air leave his lungs. 3 babies, the triplets. His world tilted for a moment. He thought she had twins. But there was a 3rd child, the one he hadn't stayed long enough to meet. He tried to laugh it off, sipping more champagne than he should. "Looks like my ex has been busy," he muttered to one of his groomsmen. But his groomsman just whistled. "Man, she's glowing. I mean, really glowing. You sure she's not seeing someone rich?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "She's not that rich," he snapped. He was wrong. At dinner, Emily was seated near the Hales' table, a spot reserved for distinguished guests. Daniel's stomach turned as he realized Victoria's father had personally invited her over. Arthur leaned across the table. "Emily, we're expanding our sustainability division. I'd love to discuss a potential partnership with your foundation." Emily smiled. "I'd be honored. Let's talk Monday." Daniel nearly choked on his wine. Monday, partnership, Victoria leaned over to him, whispering sharply, "She's networking with my father at our wedding. Can you do something?" But what could he do? "'Cause a scene. Demand that the staff remove her." He knew how that would look. The ex-husband, threatened by the success of the woman he left behind. The press would eat it alive. He sat there, trapped in his own perfect event, watching the one woman he'd meant to humiliate turn into the guest of honor. Emily's triplets were the stars of the evening too. The boys charmed the waiters and the little girl had the entire staff wrapped around her tiny finger. They carried the same dark hair and hazel eyes Daniel saw in the mirror every morning. And the longer he stared, the colder his heart grew. One of the guests leaned over and whispered to him, "Cute kids, huh? They look just like you." Daniel's wine glass froze halfway to his lips. It hit him like a freight train. They were his children. All three. Not two. Three. The third baby had been born after he'd left. He'd never even known she existed. He felt his throat close up. For the first time that night, he wasn't angry or proud, he was ashamed. He found himself staring at Emily again. She was laughing, radiant under the warm lights, surrounded by people who respected her. And she didn't look at him with bitterness or anger. She didn't need to. Her success was louder than revenge could ever be. After dinner, Daniel finally gathered the courage to approach her. "Emily," he said quietly, as she stood near the balcony overlooking the garden. She turned, her expression calm but cautious. "Daniel, you look different," he began awkwardly. "I am different," she said simply. "Time changes things." He hesitated. "The kids, they're mine, aren't they?" Emily's lips curved into a faint smile. "All three of them." He felt his chest tighten. "Why didn't you tell me?" Her eyes softened, but her tone stayed steady. "You walked out before I even knew I was having the third. And by the time I found out, you made it clear you didn't want a family holding you back." He opened his mouth, but no words came. The truth hit harder than he expected. She looked past him toward the ballroom, where laughter and music spilled out into the night. "I raised them alone. I built my business while they slept beside my desk. Every tear, every late night, every dollar, I earned it. And now," she smiled faintly, "now we're doing just fine." Daniel swallowed hard. "Emily, I don't," she interrupted gently. "You don't owe me anything. And I don't owe you forgiveness. But I hope, someday you'll learn what real success looks like. It's not money or status. It's who stands by you when you have nothing." She placed a hand on his shoulder, soft, but final, and walked away. Daniel stood there alone, the echo of her words louder than the music. When he finally turned back to the crowd, he saw her surrounded by people, Victoria's father shaking her hand again, the press taking photos, her children smiling beside her. It was clear to everyone now, the true queen of the evening wasn't Victoria Hale. It was the woman Daniel had thrown away. As the night went on, Daniel tried to smile for the cameras, but the joy had drained out of him. Victoria's laugh grated on his nerves. Her father barely spoke to him anymore, too busy discussing partnerships with Emily. By the end of the night, Daniel watched from the steps as the same Rolls-Royce pulled up again. The chauffeur opened the door. Emily ushered her triplets inside, the little girl waving sweetly at the crowd. Daniel's throat burned as the car glided away into the moonlight. He realized that the one he'd wanted to humiliate had shown him the harshest truth of all, that she didn't need him, and that leaving her had been the biggest mistake of his life. Inside, Victoria was arguing with her father, furious that he was impressed by that woman. The guests were already gossiping, and the media had found a new headline. Ex-wife of groom steals spotlight at lavish Hale wedding, arrives in Rolls-Royce, owns major foundation. By morning, Emily's foundation would have double the donors. Daniel's new marriage, however, would be hanging by a thread. Because sometimes, karma doesn't come with thunder and lightning. Sometimes, it arrives in a Rolls-Royce. With triplets.